Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 126 based on novel. So let's start. Human level soul skill, Yang's soul determination. At the moment when Xiao Yan's bitter cry came out, a terrible suction suddenly came out of Xiao Yan's body. In front of the terrible suction, Xiao Yan couldn't help but change his face. In his heart, he couldn't help but surge into a deep shock. At the moment when the suction came out, Xiao Yan only felt that the soul power released into the space between heaven and earth was out of his control and was being torn away by the strange suction. Then, in Xiao Yan's surprised eyes, he was forcibly inhaled into Xiao Yan's body. Moreover, this suction seems to specialize in soul power, but in the twinkling of an eye, it has forcibly swallowed a lot of the original power of Xiao Yan's soul. Whenever a wisp of soul power breaks away from Xiao Yan's control, there will be a sharp pain-like tear in Xiao Yan's mind. The severe pain, as if the soul had been forcibly torn off, quickly distorts the expression on Xiao Yan's face. At the same time, different from the previous fake, this time, Xiao Yan's face is really pale. Damn, can this strange fighting skill forcibly devour the soul power of others and turn it into your own? He endured the severe pain from the depths of his soul. The huge ruler in Xiao Yan's hand trembled with Xiao Yan's body. His distorted face showed the seriousness and pain in Xiao Yan's heart at the moment. Unexpectedly, even at the end of the crossbow, Xiao Yan was able to display such terrible fighting skills. In desperation, Xiao Yan had to retreat for a distance, and the terrible suction enveloping Xiao Yan's whole body was relieved. Hey, human-level soul skill, it's really unexpected that a 2-star fighting emperor can still get this level of soul skill. It's a pity that this fighting skill is too weird and doesn't follow humanity. It's destined to be practiced by guys with extreme ideas. Just when Xiao Yan's face was dignified, the bone in his body was quiet, but there was a word of regret. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yan's face looked slightly, and a sense of joy rushed into his heart. Fortunately, at this critical moment, Guyo finally made a sound. Old Bone, do you know how to deal with this guy's soul skills? If you let this guy continue, I'm afraid it will be troublesome. Hey, boy, don't underestimate any strong man fighting the emperor. Even if the other person is seriously injured, his explosive power is often more terrible than you think. This is just like when they look at you. What Xiao Yan got in exchange for his words was a burst of ridicule from Jiu. Hearing this, Xiao Yan smiled bitterly in his heart and couldn't help but show a touch on his face. He hurriedly spoke to Jiu again with a slightly anxious voice. Jiu Lao, I'll pay attention to what you said in the future, but now, how to solve this guy is the key, otherwise I can't say today, I'll really be dragged to death here by this guy. Hey, although the soul skill is difficult to deal with, this guy is just a 2-star fighting emperor. Anyway, his soul power can't be compared with you. If you want to defeat him, you will have a lot of difficulties. However, this guy is now in a state of soul, and his strength has been reduced by at least 80%. This soul skill is certainly a human soul skill, but no matter how powerful the soul skill itself is, the power of the performer is the most important. You should also know this. With your current soul power and different fire help, want to break his soul skills, in fact, it's not difficult. Jiu seems to be indifferent to Xiao Yan's terrible power at the moment. Listening to his words, it seems that there is a hint of disdain. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly opened up. Indeed, he only noticed the horror of this man's soul skill, but he forgot that Xiao Yan is at the end of a powerful crossbow at the moment. Perhaps this soul skill is quite powerful for others, but it is impossible to cause substantive damage to Xiao Yan with different fire protection. Xiao Yan just thinks too much of the soul skill. What should I do now? Did I break his soul skill by force? Xiao Yan stares at Xiao Yan on the opposite side with fierce eyes. The palm holding the ruler handle gradually exerts force and makes a creaking sound. No. However, Jiu's words made Xiao Yan's body suddenly stunned. His face, which had just recovered its cold color, immediately turned into a piece of consternation. No, not only don't start a strong attack, but also give him soul power and let him swallow it. Next, Jiu's words stunned Xiao Yan even more. What kind of way is this? Not only don't deal with Xiao Yan, but also give him his soul power to swallow. Hey, don't worry. Just give it to him, but before that, you have to integrate your strange fire into your soul. Jiu smiled. The meaning in the words brightened Xiao Yan's eyes. It seemed that he thought of something. Old Bone, do you mean? Haha, just do as I say. I believe you will have a good harvest. Although this means may be too extreme, isn't this old boy's means more vicious? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yan grinned in his heart. At the same time, a pair of dark eyes also slowly lifted up, and his heart moved. In the dark pupil, there was a gorgeous different fire rising up immediately. Under Xiao Yang's control, strands of different fire quietly poured out of Xiao Yang's pores and turned into the soul power diffused around Xiao Yang. With the integration of different fire, the strong wind tearing Xiao Yang's soul power was suddenly isolated from the ground that day. Feeling this change, Xiao Yang also smiled coldly. Immediately, his mind moved, and the invisible soul power immediately spread out. The target was Zhao Xian. Hehe, since you want to devour my soul power, I'll let you devour enough. With a cold smile in his heart, Xiao Yang also took a step. Under Zhao Xian's surprised eyes, he held a heavy ruler and walked slowly towards him. Seeing that Xiao Yang suddenly didn't avoid and dodge, but walked towards himself, Zhao Xian couldn't help feeling a surprise. However, then, with the strange suction pouring out of his body, a magnificent soul force poured into Zhao Xian's body. Huh! He was surprised, but then Zhao Xian's face became ferocious. He bared his teeth and looked at Xiao Yang with a ferocious smile. He laughed and said, "Ha ha! Xiao Yang, you are really looking for your own death. Knowing that I will devour your soul power, you dare to come forward. It's really a moth to the fire and a soul to kill him. Ha ha ha!" However, in this regard, Xiao Yang looked at the latter's eyes, but there was no wave at all. Although Xiao Yang's face quickly turned pale because of the lack of soul power, Xiao Yang also knew that what he had lost at the moment would be taken back intact sooner or later, and what he would take back would only be more than this. The wind howled on the vast and empty sky, and the fierce hurricane was like a giant beast that destroyed everything. It ran freely across the sky, and the wind howled across the heaven and earth. The whole heaven and earth were afraid and trembling under this terrible pressure. Unknowingly, the sun passed away, and I didn't know whether it was the sunset or because even the day was escaping. At the center of the storm, a slightly illusory figure was ferociously wearing a very terrible-looking sen-white face. The corners of his mouth showed a bloodthirsty and cruel smile. He waved his arms and grabbed the palm wildly on the surrounding void. It seemed that he wanted to put all the soul forces around him into his body. Although his face is still as pale as paper, the incomparable power in his body makes Zhao Xian more crazy at the moment, especially after seeing Xiao Yang whose face is more pale than him. Zhao Xian feels very happy. In his eyes, Xiao Yang at the moment is afraid that he has already been regarded as a dead man. Ha ha, ha ha. Xiao Yang, I don't want to see you as high as I am. I can't think of it. If you trust the big consequences, you will be dead. Seeing Xiao Yang, who was still stubborn and hard to walk towards himself, the ferocious color on Zhao Xian's face looked particularly terrible. While the ferocious laughter came out of his mouth, his heart moved, and the surging terrorist attraction in his body became more frightening at the moment. With the more terrible suction pouring out of Zhao Xian's body, the soul power shrouded in Zhao Xian's body suddenly seemed to find a pouring mouth and turned into an invisible wave, such as being enlightened, quickly poured into Zhao Xian's body. With the continuous infusion of these soul forces, Zhao Xian's breath also soared rapidly. At the same time, an invisible vast soul pressure also spread from Zhao Xian's body. Under this terrible soul pressure, even the emptiness around Zhao Xian's body was forcibly torn open a black space crack. Ha ha, ha ha. If you are worthy of being a herbalist, the strength of the soul is really unmatched by ordinary people. Eyes closed, Zhao Xian held his head high and said slowly. After swallowing Xiao Yang's soul power, Zhao Xian's state was quickly restored. Zhao Xian couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief because of his almost full soul power in his body. Then, he slowly withdrew his eyes and looked at Xiao Yang again with a grim smile. A pair of dark white eyes showed a cruel bloodthirsty color. Originally, Banzun intended to die with you, but from now on, it's not necessary, ha ha. The eyes greedily looked at Xiao Yang, whose breath became weaker and weaker. Zhao Xian's bloodthirsty smile on the corner of his mouth was even more dazzling. Then, Zhao Xian washed his mouth again and said with a grim smile, "Now, I intend to devour all your soul power, ha ha." The shrill laughter was like the neighing of a fierce ghost, stabbing people's eardrums. At the same time, the suction in Zhao Xian's body became more turbulent at the moment. The void around his body, after all, could not help the crazy tear of the suction, but was forcibly torn into pieces and turned into a dark, deep and endless void. Cough. He coughed violently for a few times. Xiao Yang only felt that his whole body had begun to disobey. Each step of stepping out and landing would make Xiao Yang tremble. Although Xiao Yang's body is still standing in the void, The lack of soul power in his body makes Xiao Yang lose a lot of control over all parts of his body unconsciously. At the moment, Xiao Yang is like a soul in a bottle. Any move he makes will make the bottle swing left and right, but it makes Xiao Yang more restless. Cough. Until a moment, when Xiao Yang finally stabilized his body again, the steps that should have continued to move forward stopped at the moment. Huh. Seeing this, Zhao Xian first gently raised his eyebrows, and immediately a sneer appeared on his face. His face was ferocious and said with a smile, "Ha ha, can't you hold on at last, Xiao Yang? It seems that you are still in your own bag after all. Your life should be yours. Ha ha." At the moment when the voice fell, Zhao Xian's face suddenly became fierce. The soles of his feet suddenly stepped on the void, and the surging soul force immediately broke the void under his feet. At the same time, Zhao Xian's body also appeared in front of Xiao Yang in an instant, and his right hand turned into a claw. The whole human settlement was high and down, and one claw grabbed Xiao Yang's head. Die. Well. You're too happy. However, at this time, Xiao Yang, whose face was very white in front of him, was trembling and spitting out a word with difficulty. Hearing the speech, Zhao Xian's heart was full of sneers. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang dared to say such boastful words at this time. Hiss. The surging soul power quickly gathered on Zhao Xian's right-hand claw, and the terrible pressure swept over the whole sky. Wherever the claw passed, the void collapsed in an instant, and invisible qi continued to shoot on the void. The terrible wind pressure, like a big knife, fell on Xiao Yang's forehead first. Just for a moment, fresh blood poured out of Xiao Yang's forehead without money. However, because Xiao Yang's soul power was extremely weak at the moment, Xiao Yang didn't check the most common feeling about this. Then the next moment, Zhao Xian's claws wrapped by the surging soul power had come to the position a few inches above Xiao Yang's head. At the moment, hundreds of wounds, large and small, have spread all over Xiao Yang's body. The blood is like a spring, which has completely dyed Xiao Yang into a blood man. Die. Ha ha, I can't blame you for what happened today. You can only blame you. You're too greedy. Bang. Then, when Zhao Xian's claws were about to fall on Xiao Yang's head, a violent bang like a balloon burst, but it was very abrupt and resounded through the sky. At the same time, the claws that Zhao Xian wanted to fall were also instantly solidified in the air. In Zhao Xian's pair of sen-white eyes, the meaning of greed and bloodthirsty passed away rapidly, and what he turned to was a godless void. This. How? Can. When the last sentence in his mouth was full of extremely unwilling words, in front of Xiao Yang, Zhao Xian's body quickly gushed out a pink flame. At the same time, in this flame, there was also an invisible different fire. It was the combination of the two that could completely erase Zhao Xian's consciousness in such a short moment. As the strange fire gushed out, Zhao Xian's original solid body quickly became illusory. A crazy suction also gushed out of Zhao Xian's abdomen again, bringing together all the soul forces released by Zhao Xianggang in an instant. Cough. Hihi, even my soul power dares to devour at will. Zhao Xian, it's me and you who fly moths to the fire. The dark night sky, like a curtain, gradually bloomed with the complete disappearance of Zhao Xian, and the depressing atmosphere originally shrouded between heaven and earth became relaxed. Until now, Xiao Yang slowly raised his head. His dark and deep eyes looked at the bright Milky Way shining with stars above his head. Oh, is it dark? There was a trace of surprise in the dark pupil. It turned out that the battle with Zhao Xian had lasted for a full day unconsciously. Although this process was a little more difficult than Xiao Yang originally thought, fortunately, with bones secluded nearby, today's thing can be regarded as breathtaking. At the bottom of his heart, he breathed a long sigh of relief. Xiao Yang's nervous tension all day was finally relaxed at this moment, but then, Xiao Yang hurried to cheer up again. His eyes burst out from the depths of his pupils, and his eyes slowly moved down. Finally, he fell on a milky white light mass suspended in front of him. This light group is the source of Zhao Xian's soul, which has been thoroughly refined by different fire from inside to outside. Of course, it not only contains Zhao Xian's own soul power, but also integrates almost all of Xiao Yang's soul power. And because of this, Xiao Yang was able to instantly erase Zhao Xian's consciousness in such a short time. As for the moment, after the refining of different fire, what is left at the moment is the purest force of the source of the soul. The purity of this soul origin is enough for anyone to refine it easily without any sequelae. However, the only difference is that Zhao Xian's soul consciousness is erased by Xiao Yang, which makes his soul origin more or less lost. Therefore, even if Xiao Yang can absorb all the source of the soul in front of him, there can only be most of them that can be used for it. Who? Once again, Xiao Yang breathed out a long breath, but he was not eager to devour the source of the soul in front of him, but forced his body to sit cross-legged on the void. In any case, Xiao Yang at the moment needs to recover some physical strength first. Otherwise, any eagerness for success may have an irreversible change to the final result. The source of the soul in front of him, of course, has a great attraction to Xiao Yang at the moment, but Xiao Yang knows better that it is impossible to easily refine such a huge source of the soul with his state at the moment. In order not to make mistakes, even if he delays a little more time, it is worth it. In the twinkling of an eye, the night will go, and the shallow fluorescence will quietly cover the whole earth like a layer of white frost. It is another day, quietly. When the first ray of morning light fell on Xiao Yang's eyelids, Xiao Yang also seemed to be aware of it. His eyelids trembled slightly and opened slowly. One night's cultivation did not make Xiao Yang's pale face recover much. After all, what is really missing in Xiao Yang's body at the moment is soul power, not something that can be easily made up for by a little fighting spirit. But even so, it is enough for Xiao Yang to devour the origin of those souls. With a faint breath, Xiao Yang's dark eyes stared at the source of the soul in front of him again. Although the breath in his body was still weak, he could not help showing a hot color in the depths of Xiao Yang's eyes at the moment. In addition to his original soul power, I don't know whether his soul power can reach the level of a third-order herbalist after swallowing and refining Zhaoxian's soul source. Of course, this is just the subjective imagination in Xiao Yang's heart. After all, the soul power needed to reach the third-order herbalist is extremely huge. With the experience of Bo Nu borrowing his soul power, Xiao Yang knows that these soul forces alone are not enough to make him reach the level of the third-order herbalist. What's more, as a herbalist, the strength of the soul is the first standard, but the refining technique still has a lot of pressure on Xiao Yang, who has never been in contact with the third-order pill. After all, in contrast, the refining difficulty of the third-order pill is far from that of the second-order pill. If you want to refine it, you can not only rely on the strength of the soul, but also test the pharmacist's more superb control over the flame. In the void, Xiao Yang sat in a good shape, and the hot mood in his heart swept away his fatigue. At the moment, although Xiao Yang's face was pale, his mental state was particularly good, which was mostly due to the milky soul source in front of him. The soul in Xiao Yang's mind trembled slightly. At the same time, the source of the soul suspended in front of Xiao Yang also moved with it, as if it had been pulled by some kind of traction and approached Xiao Yang's body. There is a soul origin the size of a football, on which wisps of fog-like lines spread, intertwined in Xiao Yang's chest, and then penetrated into the skin through Xiao Yang's black robe, reaching the root of the soul. Well, with the influx of the first strand of soul origin into the soul, Xiao Yang's body couldn't help trembling slightly. At the same time, the muscles on his face trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but utter a crisp groan. Next, the source of soul was like a separated tributary, first separated, then interwoven and gathered, and finally poured into Xiao Yang's body. The origin of the soul consumed by Xiao Yang the day before also recovered rapidly under the gradual absorption and refining that seemed so slow, but slow and urgent. Unknowingly, the day passed silently from the fingertips again, and the soul power missing in Xiao Yang's body has been restored. Xiao Yang's face has changed from pale and bloodless at the beginning to ruddy. Faintly, there is an invisible pressure that diffuses from Xiao Yang's body, which makes people dare not underestimate. Under such intermittently refining, until the next evening, the source of the soul suspended in front of Xiao Yang gradually changed from the size of a football to the size of a fist, and finally turned into a milky white light spot the size of a thumb, which was absorbed by Xiao Yang. Who? After refining for 2 days, the source of the soul in front of Xiao Yang was finally completely absorbed by him. Until now, the soul power in Xiao Yang's body has reached an extremely terrible level. Although it is far from comparable to the third-order medicine refiner, I believe that the soul power of this level is even better than that of Xu Songming. Think about it. When Xiao Yang opened his eyes again, what he saw was a blood-red scorching sun. Surrounded by a large fire cloud, he was like a monarch who had just retired from the battlefield, kneeling down in the whole world and slowly stepping down on the west. With the sunset, the towering mountains kneeling on the earth seemed to bury their heads deeper, leaving a dark shadow on the vast land. At this moment, it seems that even those warcraft hidden in the dark are quietly sending the bloody monarch away. As everyone knows, with the setting of the scorching sun, this is just the beginning of another war. Xiao Yang despised the cold atmosphere gradually shrouded in heaven and earth. Instead, he looked inward and carefully explored the soul beads in his mind, which had been swollen for several circles. The increase of the volume of the soul bead is also an affirmation of the strength of the soul of the herbalist. However, looking at the soul bead suspended in his mind several times larger than before, Xiao Yan was not satisfied. Unexpectedly, after refining the source of the soul of a strong man fighting the emperor, his soul power still didn't touch the barrier of the third-order herbalist, which made Xiao Yang feel a little lost. However, Xiao Yang only considered his own views, but didn't think about how they would feel if other herbalists noticed what Xiao Yang thought at the moment. In just 2 days, the soul power quickly soared from the level of a second-order middle-term herbalist to the level of the second-order later stage. No matter who saw this terrible growth rate, I'm afraid he could not help but exclaim. On the contrary, Xiao Yang was dissatisfied with it. "Cut, you boy, just be satisfied. You've grown up to this point. You're not satisfied. If other second-order herbalists know, they have to kill you." Well, with a little coagulation in his heart, Xiao Yang smiled, and then joked to the bone-yu in his body. "Jiyu Lao, what you said is a little heavy. At least they are second-class herbalists. Even if they are unwilling, how can they kill me? Hey, it's true to be a second-order herbalist, but a young second-order herbalist like you can't find many in the mainland. If those old guys know what you think now, even if they don't kill you, they can drink a pot just by their cannibal eyes." Jiyu sneered. Xiao Yang was stunned and secretly imagined the scene in his heart. A large group of second-class herbalists surrounded him and looked at him with strange eyes. Even with Xiao Yang's nature, he still shivered. That kind of scene is really penetrating. Back to God, Xiao Yang doesn't think about those anymore. Anyway, no matter what he thinks, how can those old guys know that Xiao Yang at the moment can't bear to try his huge soul power that has just been refined? When Xiao Yang's mind moved, the painted black soul pearl trembled and made a buzzing sound. At the same time, a magnificent soul force swept out immediately. As soon as his eyes turned, Xiao Yang immediately focused on a towering mountain. The whole mountain peak could be called an extremely conspicuous existence in the nearby mountain range. Therefore, Xiao Yang aimed at it at once. "Go." With a word falling in Xiao Yang's heart, immediately, an invisible soul training, with an extremely terrible momentum, crossed the void in an instant. Although the soul power could not be found, when it crossed the void, it still made a harsh sound explosion between heaven and earth. Immediately after the next moment, only an earth-shaking bang was heard. The towering mountain peak had been cut off from top to bottom, from the vertical state, by Xiao Yang's soul. The whole mountain peak was also separated from both sides, leaving a 10,000 cliff connecting heaven and earth at the middle end of the mountain peak. With just one blow, a towering mountain peak was forcibly turned into two. Where the soul competed, there was also a smooth and flat fracture mark like a mirror on the mountain peak. Hiss. Seeing this scene, even Xiao Yang himself couldn't help taking a breath. In this blow just now, Xiao Yang used less than 1,000th of his soul power. However, even so, the power it showed is still strong and terrible. I'm afraid this level of soul power is enough to make Xiao Yang without fighting spirit. It's easy to fight some ordinary semi-imperial strong men. This point, just think about it, Xiao Yang doesn't feel a burst of heat in his heart. If even the soul power can be strong to this extent, coupled with his fighting spirit, it can't be said that even the ordinary strong fighting emperor can touch it. "Cut, boy, you can't think too beautiful. I told you long ago, don't underestimate any fighting emperor. Even if it is a fighting emperor in the state of serious injury, you can't underestimate him. Otherwise, someone won't help you next time." However, when Xiao Yang just had such a crazy idea in his heart, the bone-yu in his body poured a basin of cold water at the right time again, so that Xiao Yang who had not gone astray could wake up quickly. Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang had to smile awkwardly. He also understood in his heart that the reason why Jiyu said this was just for his good. Therefore, no matter what the other party said, Xiao Yang just tried to reflect on himself instead of doubting the latter's words. After all, with Guyo's strength, there is no need to deceive him. Moreover, Zhao Xian's example has perfectly confirmed Guyo's sentence. After recovering the spread soul power, Xiao Yang turned his palm, and a snow-white ring appeared in the palm of his hand. This ring was originally Zhao Xian's ring, but now Zhao Xian has completely disappeared. This ring naturally belongs to Xiao Yang. With Zhao Xian's death, the soul mark originally covered on Naji was quietly dissolved, and Xiao Yang's soul power can be easily injected into it. While Xiao Yang just injected his soul power into his hands to accept the ring, there was a trace in the bottom of Xiao Yang's eyes, but it was fleeting. Then, when Xiao Yang's soul power poured into Naji and left his own soul mark, all the items in Naji appeared in front of Xiao Yang. Seeing a wide range of treasures in front of him, Xiao Yan's eyes immediately showed a look of great excitement. The strong fighting emperor is really extraordinary. The collection of Naji is not comparable to that of the ordinary semi-emperor strong. Most of the martial arts, fighting skills, and some natural and earth treasures can make Xiao Yan excited. Especially after seeing many herbs that he can use to refine ice elixir and bodhisattva, Xiao Yan's heart is very happy about it. I have to say that this time, it can be called a great harvest. Looking around the whole space within the ring, Xiao Yan's eyes looked more and more excited. When his eyes shifted, a glittering white jade box also appeared in Xiao Yan's eyes. Huaji pill. Because the jade box containing Huaji Dan is relatively special, Xiao Yan paid more attention to it in the auction. At the moment, he recognized it at a glance. Naturally, Huaji Dan is contained in this jade box. In the outside world, when Xiao Yan withdrew from his mind and moved his mind, the jade box appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. Although separated by the jade box, Xiao Yan immediately smelled the smell of danxiang overflowing from it. Suddenly, a cool feeling poured into Xiao Yan's limbs and bones, making him energetic. It's really worthy of being a fourth-order pill. Even the qi of Dan fragrance has such strong power. It's really incredible. With an exclamation in his mouth, Xiao Yan no longer hesitated. He opened the cover of the jade box. Immediately, the strong smell of Dan incense like a cloud spread out rapidly from the inside of the jade box, surrounded Xiao Yan's body and gradually spread. Danxiang filled the air, and Xiao Yan's sight was briefly blocked. In this regard, Xiao Yan smiled, and the gorgeous fire in the bottom of his eyes immediately rushed up. Immediately, the danxiang covered in front of him was pushed away by an invisible force. The danxiang dispersed, and the danyaro in the jade box also appeared in Xiao Yan's eyes. Sen's white pill was lying in the jade box like an ice crystal. It was only seen by the naked eye. Xiao Yan seemed to feel the powerful power contained in the pill. Tut tut. Such a small pill can make up for hundreds of years of cultivation time of a strong man fighting the emperor. No wonder they will exchange it at such a high price. He exclaimed again. However, when Xiao Yan's words fell, a joking smile was raised at the corners of his mouth. Although the Huaji pill was valuable, those who fought against the emperor paid all the price, but in the end, it still fell into his hands. Who can think of this result? Lingering eyes paused for a long time on the pill in the jade box, but finally, Xiao Yan put it away. Xiao Yan also understood the truth that money is not exposed. Although there is no other person in his environment at the moment, who knows if he will attract any strong people because of the smell of Dan incense. Put away the pill, but Xiao Yan didn't stop because of it. His dark eyes turned slightly, and his mind moved. Around Xiao Yan's body, in the void, strands of lacquer black energy also gathered. Immediately, under Xiao Yan's control, 7 lacquer black tents were condensed around his body. Who? Next, it's time to see this, ha ha. His face was a little excited. Xiao Yan's eyes immediately swept over the 7 tabernacles in front of him, and then carefully explored the 7 tabernacles in front of him. A moment later, Xiao Yan, who had a look of sigh, now locked his eyebrows and looked puzzled on his face. This. Although it is obvious that the power of the avenue under your control has increased a lot, it seems that there is no other difference except that you can condense one more tent. Old Bone, do you know what's going on? In desperation, Xiao Yan had to turn to Jiyu for help. After all, only Jiyu can answer all these questions for him now. Hey, boy, it's said that it's not easy to cultivate the power of the road, but I don't seem to have much difficulty looking at you. When the words with a slight sense of ridicule came, Xiao Yan was stunned, and immediately couldn't help but pick his eyebrow and ask, Jiyu Lao, do you mean? Hey, let's not talk about the 7th tabernacle, but the first 6. Do you know that even some people who have understood the power of the road for a long time may not be able to condense the 6 tabernacles? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yan's eyes were not frozen. When he was surprised, Jiyu continued to speak and said, everyone knows that it is not easy to understand the power of the road, but what they don't know is that it is extremely difficult to cultivate the power of the road. The words fell, and a burst of white light suddenly rose on Xiao Yan's body surface. Soon, the bone-quiet figure shot out of Xiao Yan's body and stood in the void in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing this, Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows, but he didn't speak, while Jiyu dropped his deep eyes on the 7 tents in front of him. Generally speaking, people who have just understood the power of the road can generally condense the tent with the power of the road. Of course, generally speaking, they can only condense 1, and 2 to 3 shows that this person has a good understanding talent for the power of the road. As for more, It is more proof of the understanding talent of the person who understands the power of the road. Talent. Doesn't it mean that the power of the road can only rely on simple understanding? How can there be talent? Hearing the so-called understanding talent, Xiao Yan couldn't help but be a little stunned. Then he looked up at Guyo and asked with a frown. The words are true. The power of the road can only be improved by the cultivator's understanding, but whether it can be understood also depends on the congenital conditions, which is inevitable. Otherwise, how can so many people fail to understand the power of the road? The reason is the congenital conditions, that is, what I call talent. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang nodded, but there was still a little puzzled color on his face. If so, the cultivation of the power of the road was almost the same as fighting spirit, but it was a different way. It seemed that Xiao Yang was aware of the doubt of dependence in his heart. Jiyu moved slightly and came to a tent. He stretched out 2 fingers, turned his wrist and hit the tent in front of him. At the same time, continued to open in the bone-secluded mouth, saying, "The so-called congenital conditions are like your origin." At the moment of Guyo's hand, Xiao Yang's eyes shifted abruptly. At the same time, Guyo's voice came from his ears. Some people are of noble origin. As soon as they are born, their power is the first superpower in the mainland. This son's future road is not only smooth and carefree, but also has the highest martial arts and fighting skills. On the contrary, some people may die when they are born. This is the congenital condition. At the moment when the words fell, the 2 bones and quiet fingers were ruthlessly placed on the tent in front of them. Suddenly, circles of fierce ripples spread from the tent, and even the surrounding void fluctuated. On the other side, Xiao Yang's face changed slightly. Then he saw that at the junction of Guyo's fingers and his tent, a little Mori white light suddenly flickered. Immediately, a circle of Mori white flame ripples swept out, and in a twinkling, they also condensed into a flame tent. This is the Road of Fire. This video will end here.